Hello and welcome back to Move Well, Live Well, Perform Well. I'm super excited to have Nick Littlehales here with us today, who is a bit of a sleep guru. He has written books, worked with elite athletes around the world, and is coming on today to chat to us all things about sleep. So, Nick, welcome. Thank you for your time. Can you tell
My
us
pleasure.
a little bit about yourself?
Try and keep it short. Yeah, I sort of fell into what's called the furniture industry, sleep industry a long time ago. Wasn't really my particular career move. I was trying to get into sport and things like that. But I happened to get married and fell into that industry. Ended up becoming a sales and marketing director for a big comfort group called Slumberland, if
Yeah.
anybody's old enough to remember them. Um, and Set up the first sleep council in the UK, which I was chairman of for a while. Midlife crisis, got disillusioned with sleep, and everybody takes it for granted. And the industry was very cottagey and didn't really want to move forward. So I decided to leave the industry. Um, and right at that moment in time, a few things happened, which landed me having conversations with Manchester United Football Club, who are just down the road from my UK offices in Manchester. And that led to a sort of a dialect about performance and recovery and sleep's role in that, and that it happened to be football, happened to be Manchester United, but it was Sir Alex Ferguson at the time, the manager, and he became a little bit intrigued about this area that they do nothing about, and that conversation started. We had made some pretty significant steps. I was trying to make it up, really. There was no other sleep coaches around.
Hmm.
There was nothing to sort of gauge against. So it was really just my knowledge, my understanding, a lot of the misunderstandings around sleep. And that led to working with some pretty significant people over the last couple of decades. And here we are talking today because it's something probably back in the late 90s I never thought would happen, that sleep would become such a big thing. Um, but there's a lot of heightened awareness around sleep, which is not always good. So I think we've certainly made a lot of progress, but we've probably jumped off a cliff um, in the last few years. So it's a nice opportunity to sort of address that. But it's been an exciting journey, a difficult one, but there you go. Here we are today.
Okay, interesting. So there'll perhaps be a few little insights that we might pull out of, because I'm sure, Alex Ferguson would have been an interesting character to try to work with back then.
Uh-huh.
But I think you're right in that sleep has, now been thrust to the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and wearables are tracking it. People are far more aware. There's been a lot of literature and books out about sleep. So people are taking a bit more attention to it and paying a lot more attention to it. So maybe a good place to start is, what's good sleep? What's your or what is the ideal sleep pattern for people?
That's a really, I think that's one of the sort of questions that fascinates us, and it still does. Any particular piece of research, or like you mentioned, there's lots of books and clinicians looking at how important sleep is to us. But I think you just theoretically just want to get the energy back
Hmm.
to get what needs to get done. It's kind of like a performance criteria because it's very important to us,
Yep.
to how we function. But at the end of the day, it still remains, however you sleep, you're still going to go and get what needs to get done. So the kids go to school and we go to work, and planes get flown and surgeons go to work. So it's kind of good sleep for me is getting into a place where you don't worry about it.
Yep.
It's a very natural process to every day. It is that sort of fourth health pillar.
Hmm.
Um, but when you start to try and make it work, right? So we try and make things happen in all sorts of areas of performance. it's sort of like a mental and physical activity: eating, hydrating, exercising, movement, all of those sort of things. We sort of decide what we're going to do, and we get on with it and measure it and see how it makes us feel.
Yep.
um, Sleep, your brain is in control. You're not in control of it. So it's about your behavior during your wake hours in every 24 hours that sort of comes together, that gives the brain the opportunity to develop sleep as it would want to. So it's sort of, if you get too focused on, like pre-sleep routines or certain things, or it's sort of, you've got to be more mindful of that. If you do certain things during your rolling 24 hours, then you shouldn't expect your brain to be able to deliver the kind of sleep that you want.
Yep.
And when you get to that place of understanding how it works, then you don't get worried that maybe tonight you're not going to sleep at all,
Yeah. Yep.
because that's going to be quite natural,
Yep.
So anybody who's not slept or had really disturbed sleep, but probably before a big event or something like that, or just lots of other things going on, you can still go out and smash it. You can't do that consistently,
From
but
a
it's that sort
performance
of
point of view,
mindset.
you mean you can still go out
Yeah,
and smash it? Yeah, from a performance point. Yep.
from that sort of element is sort of stop worrying about it, and when you do, you sort of develop a more human-centered approach to your everyday, and sleep just takes care of itself.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a vague answer to your question because there's so many variables in play
So if we
that
had to dive a fraction deeper, is it more
uh,
about the hours that you sleep or the quality of your sleep to get?
you're asking some good questions here, son.
Well, we're just getting
Uh,
going, really.
um, there was always this time when I spent quite a bit of time with a professor of sleep, a sleep clinician, an academic. When I was chairman of the Sleep Council, spent a lot of time with him, and he could never give me a definitive approach to how to get good quality sleep.
Mhm.
Um, there was a number of factors
Which is
in
odd
play,
considering,
but
that's what we all want to try and do.
yeah, yeah. And so it's sort of like, okay, should I get my 8 hours? Um, and it's sort of like, well, yes, in the sort of context of every 24 hours, you've got mental and physical activities, you've got eating, hydrating, and moving, you've got the circadian rhythm of our planet and us as human beings, sunrise, midday, sunset. So within that 24 hours, we really should be in some sort of sleep state
Yep.
for around 30% of that. So sort of 8 hours comes to mind.
Okay. So
But then
roughly 8
the
hours.
formative, roughly 8 hours. So, but the formative growth years, where our brain's totally in control, we sleep for long periods of
Yeah.
time, and that sort of goes down as we get into early teens and adolescence. So then you also can can look at the fact that it wasn't that long ago where there's no evidence of sleeping in one block,
Yep.
monophasic block, in any 24 hours. It was always multiphasic, called polyphasic. So when you sort of combine the things, is where did this 8 hours in one block come from? And that was principally because we invented light and changed our behavior with natural rhythms.
Hmm.
So it's kind of, we're trying to squeeze all of the sleep into one block in phase four for lots of us in our 24 hours, rather than it being more distributed.
So the
So
siestas that a lot of the world do
yeah,
have.
yeah. So it's sort of, like I said, it was sort of like, well, so what is it then within sleep itself, as the brain takes over? Um, they sort of look in a clinical environment at every 90 minutes,
Yep.
some 60. But during that period of time, these various stages of sleep are being developed by your brain. They don't always come in a particular order, but you've got the lighter sleep stages and the deeper sleep stages, for the
Hmm.
sake of argument, non-REM, REM,
Yep.
rapid eye movement, things like that. So in the sort of, the brain starts looking for it and trying to develop it. And the deeper restorative sleep stages, when you're sort of pretty much semi-paralyzed, and unconscious to the world, are your most vulnerable stages.
Hmm.
So I can come into your bedroom and you wouldn't even know I was there,
Yep.
like if you watch children sleeping.
Yep. So that's the deep
So
sleep stage that
in
you're
that,
talking about.
yeah. So there was a lot of evidence that the brain looks to try and develop those restorative sleep stages in the first 2 or 3 cycles of anybody's sleep. So when you sort of break that down a little bit, five 90-minute cycles is 7.5 hours, is where the sort of eight sits.
Yep.
15 minutes in, 15 minutes out. The first 2 or 3 cycles, two or three 90-minute cycles, when the brain does try to develop that restorative sleep stages,
Hmm.
and then it stops looking for it
Okay.
because you're moving into the cycles where you're going to wake up again. So the quality and quantity thing is, what are you doing every day that will help your brain try to develop those restorative sleep stages in the first couple of cycles
Yep.
of when you enter sleep? Rather than thinking of it, I've just allocated 8 or 9 hours to sleep, so that's fine, my job's done. That doesn't mean to say you're going to sleep with quality or be refreshed from it. You can spend a lot of time in light sleep stages and not get the restorative sleep stages.
Yep.
And those stages only appear in around 25% of any period of time. So when you started to look into it, there was no definitive thing, and it was more to do with how many hours you allocate to it rather than actually, I should be focusing on what's going to trigger those
That
restorative stages in the first 2 or 3 cycles of my sleep.
okay. And so in the restorative phases, are we talking deep sleep and REM during, or is it more just the deep sleep, which is
Brilliant.
the real? Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of whenever you look at how we sort of characterize this and the research that's going on, there's always this sort of caveat that we're still learning about it, and obviously emerging technologies allows us to go even further into this area. But it sort of it sort of indicates to you that without without any real question, when you're in those deeper sleep stages, the non-REM stages of your sleep,
Yep.
you are pretty much shut down. So pretty much everything about you as a human being can be repaired, rejuvenated, has time off from being active.
Hmm.
So it kind of that's how you get your recovery because you're doing the least amount of you know functional activities while you're in that state. Outside of that, you're still very much alert and you can still be digesting things and processing things and all sorts of things. So it really is trying to think that in those particular stages, your brain has been able to shut you down
Yep.
completely and do its job. In other stages, it's kind of like recovery, but not as good.
Yep. Okay. So in our world, our musculoskeletal world, with injuries and pain, we
Uh,
often talk about people needing to achieve that stage four, that deep sleep, because otherwise they're not going
yeah,
to repair. They're not going to get into that phase where they're repairing muscle or tissue or bone or
yeah.
and also, cleaning their brain up from all the work that it's done during the day. Is that what you're sort of suggesting? That's the
Yeah,
phase
I think
that all happens in?
yeah, I think sort of very early on when you mentioned sort of talking to Alex Ferguson and the physios and the things at the time, it's sort of like, well, that's an interesting sort of outlook on it because if that's where we can really get some physical rehabilitation, is that we should be trying to focus on how do we help the athletes achieve that
Yeah.
restorative sleep stage because for an athlete in that sense it wasn't really about get a good night's sleep because it would make you feel good. It was more to do with what's going to happen while you're asleep that will help with injury times
Yep.
and creating injuries and how things recur because all of those things you've just mentioned are just not getting the opportunity to recover properly
Yeah. Definitely.
or repair properly.
Yeah. I think there's some interesting points I'd love to touch on there, if that's okay, Nick. Um, we'll come back. We'll circle back to the injuries because I know there's a wealth of evidence suggesting that athletes, if they don't get a required number of hours, have a higher injury risk.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the circadian rhythm. Are you able to just elaborate a little bit on what that circadian rhythm is, and is it a perfect sort of rhythm, and how does that relate to those sort of 90-minute sort of sleep cycles uh, that we all have?
Well, I was just interested by this fact. I couldn't find a definitive approach. I was interested in the fact that it is really important to us, and yet everybody takes it for granted. So it's sort of you're trying to sort of you look at circadian rhythms, and you can go right into the science of that and get. What I was trying to do was to create a sort of mindset about rhythm and pattern and
Yep.
cycles. Is that as a human being, as mammals, we are we're aligned to this process, and what sort of things are aligning us with that process. So you sort of start with sort of there are four phases in 24 hours. There are sunrise, midday, sunset. There's that relationship with light and dark and temperature shifts, and the phases of those days. It's clear if we're very synchronized with that process, there's all sorts of things like blood pressure and coordination that sort of appear,
Yep.
including there's sort of there's lots of things that go on. You can look at adenosine, you can look at all sorts of things, but principally sort of to have that knowledge of serotonin and melatonin and light in production in a 24 hours. So it was kind of getting that sort of relationship with you can't you know you need to you need to help your brain
Yep.
feel as though there is a sunrise.
Yep.
There is a sort of start to the day,
That
not random.
I mean, that's why
uh,
everyone sort
you
of
want
espouses getting that natural light first thing in the morning, that sunlight where you
Yeah.
can.
So it's just like, well, how do you get somebody to go, well, just the first thing you want to do is step outside or reveal that daylight and the blue energy wave, because that's going to trigger this lovely thing called serotonin that's going to unsuppress everything from sleep and get you going
Yep.
and make you functional. So it was trying to find things within all the science around, because the everybody's schedules can't fit a natural rhythm
Yeah.
to let these things happen like that. But it was trying to get that sort of understanding that you do need to at least have a subconscious relationship with the first phase of the day, the second one, the third one. That nighttime is not always about completely dark. Anybody who goes outside, there's stars and the moon, and there's
Yep.
weather and clouds, so it's not always so specific. So it's trying to get a much better relationship with what we mean by light and dark and temperature shifts, and that relationship to the 24 hours. And the cycles bit, you'll probably smile, but remember, I'm having these types of conversations where there's nobody around talking about sleep or circadian rhythms or anything at all. No idea. So it was sort of that 90-minute cycle happened to be the length of a football game.
Hmm.
I happened to be talking to a football squad and trying to get that relationship with, trying not make something up, but sort of get them to think of, if you've got a nice anchor point to your day, which we'll call sunrise, which we'll call your alarm clock time, your
Yep. Yep.
natural wake time, your most consistent one. What we can then do is chop your 24 hours up into 16 90-minute cycles.
Hmm.
And now we've got cycle one to cycle two to cycle three. So it's the same visualization. It's 24 hours and all that sort of
Yep.
stuff. But it kind of, what do we do in cycle one to protect us in cycle two, cycle three? What about, as you mentioned, where does this siesta thing, you talk 1 till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but
Yeah.
you sort of think, well, that could be cycle six or cycle seven or cycle eight, depending on that. You can then look at A lot of people talk about consistent sleep times. I think the most important one is the consistent start time, the anchor point, the sunlight, because
So it's
the other one variables a lot,
wait time.
but it creates. Yeah, I like that one best because if you don't get that daylight, if you don't get that start to your day, and
Yep.
obviously you've got chronotypes and things like that involved in when you do, and different types of things going on of when you start your day. But that one's nice because it sort of goes, you're really helping your brain going, this is sunrise, this is light,
Yep.
this is serotonin, let's go.
Yep.
But
So you're
you can also
stimulating all those
see.
hormonal releases.
Yeah, so it's sort of like instead of thinking, well, I always get up around, 6:30 and go to work or whatever, and that gives me just enough time to, get to work. Um, then you start thinking, well, have I got enough time before I get into a workspace environment? Have I got time to hydrate, bowel
Yep.
and
Yep.
bladder, daylight, little mental challenge, things like that. So you sort of the timings gives you an opportunity to say, well, if I'm on a sort of 5 cycle nocturnal routine, that could be between 11 o'clock and 6:30 if my anchor point's 6:30.
Hmm.
So that's 5 90-minute cycles. So then you know, 10:30 is cycle 11 into cycle 12 and 11 o'clock. But if things are put under pressure, and particularly in sport you get that, but you
Yep.
get that in life these days. If things are put under pressure, then what I do is I shift till 12:30
Okay.
to take the edge off trying to just brush my teeth and jump into bed.
Yep.
So what I'm doing is trying to give my brain the opportunity of if
Just
I need to get
quietening
up
down.
earlier, it's 5 o'clock.
Yep.
If I need to sleep later, it's 12:30, 1:30. I know the cycle that I'm going to be vulnerable in is going to be around cycle 14 because that's where my brain stopped looking for deeper sleep state. It's thinking about waking up, and that's when a lot of people can trigger out of sleep and can't get back to sleep.
Is
But
that
I don't worry about that cycle.
is that 3 or 4? And so it's like stage 14 when
About that depends. Yeah, yeah, about between sort of 2 or 3 o'clock in the
is
morning when
is
everybody wakes. It's either you're going to empty your bladder
yep.
or you're just triggered out of sleep and you
Is
worry
that
about
if
you being
you're
broken.
sort of, a bit more stressed or cortisol levels or your inflammatory cycle can
Yeah,
start peaking a little bit?
absolutely. Yeah, and what you've been eating and when you ate those sort of things and da da da, da and your fluid intake and things like that, and also what you've been doing in phase 3 could put some pressure on it. So it was rather than sort of like, oh, I've done everything I need to do today, and now there's only 8 hours left before I've got to do it again. Right, get to bed,
Yep.
go
Yep.
to sleep,
Yep.
and push it. I know that's a bit exaggerated with a lot of people listening to this because they don't approach it, but a lot of people still do. But it was more, that's all right because if I'm going to do 4 cycles in 6 hours because there's a bit of pressure, I still keep the anchor point in because the sun always rises at the same time. So
Yep.
why should I change that?
Yep.
But then I can think of, little micro moments that just helps me reset by looking out of a window, about. Bit of light, bit of this, bit of visualization, change the brain's what's going on. And then I can also know that, cycle 6 is the opportunity for me to have a 20 or 30-minute reset moment, maybe a micro sleep, maybe do something
Um,
because I can keep the rhythm. Because so when you hop back to no worries, is I don't mind if I look at next 7 days in front of me. Monday looks like that. Tuesday looks like that. Wednesday there's a bit of pressure on it. Thursday's a tricky one. Friday might be like that, and Thursday might. So I think, well, I'm going to get my 35 cycles this week, but it's also going to be supported by 7 little controlled recovery periods in cycle 5 or 6. And these little micro moments also add up to my multiphasic approach. So I'm not sleeping during the day. I might nap it out, I might
yep.
micro sleep it, but I'm not thinking about actually sleeping during the wake hours. I'm thinking about
Resting.
mental recovery
Yep.
that will help later, that my 4 cycles and 6 hours could be just absolutely fine. Because if I grab 25% restorative sleep stage in the first 2 cycles of my sleep from 12:30 into 3:30 and then balance, I could do a better job than trying to put pressure on
Yep.
trying to go to bed earlier. You see?
Yep.
So that quantity quality thing, I loved some research that came out at the moment that actually we could be in a sort of semi deep sleep stage, even if we're awake, like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, sort of tossing and turning, going, trying to go back to sleep. So it's kind of, I don't think we've completely
Yeah.
defined
So what you're,
what how it works for everybody.
if I can summarize slightly, Nick, what you're
I hope you
suggesting,
can.
yeah, what you're suggesting is that there's no hard and fast rules, and everyone's going to be different based on their chronotype, and maybe we'll touch on that in a second. But their hormone profile, their life, how busy they are. But if you're not getting the required sleep, you can use this multiphasic approach and have little micro naps or recovery periods where you allow your brain to sort of daydream, or you actually have a 20 to 30-minute nap where you lie
Yeah.
down and just have some rest. Now, would you ever extend that beyond, 40 minutes, 45 minutes? Because, is that where you start getting into another sleep cycle? So you might actually feel worse for that?
I think the thing that a lot of people, when they sort of start to think along those lines, snoozers for losers, nappers, we just push the boundaries and everything else. That's fine, right? We all want to maximize every moment of our life and every period and every time, right? That's fine. But you actually, by taking this space, right, and practicing it, right? So this is always, if you practice something and you're prepared for it, then I can just drop into a 20-minute, 30-minute micro sleep anywhere,
Mhm.
anytime, anywhere in that period of time. It doesn't matter where I am because I've been practicing it with my brain, and my
It's a
brain will
good
put
skill to have.
me asleep.
Yeah.
My brain will put me asleep behind the wheel of a motor car on a motorway. Now that's nuts, right? So you're falling asleep in a meeting just after lunch. You'll fall asleep on a train with all your personal belongings, not planning to do it, but you just go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you kind of know that if you practice this and allow the space. So I'm not even trying to sleep, but I just sit and go, right, we're having 20 minutes, right? Then my brain will go, this is great. I think we need it. Let's do it. Right. And that's how it sort of comes together. It sort of, you become, I think the one thing that nobody wants to be doing is wasting valuable time sleeping without its benefits.
Yep.
And that's the bit that you sort of go, well, that 20-minute, that in that little cycle six, I try to allocate 30 minutes. I I will just do something that's completely distractive because that helps my brain when we go to sleep at night, right?
Yep.
It's like downloading, decluttering.
Yes.
I just look out of that window for 2 minutes and I'm reset, right? And you can look at meditation, everything else. But where it comes to it, I think the key thing is once you've got that 30 minutes out of 90 is 30%, 30% of 24 is 8. That sort of thing that you look at is that it is known that that 26 minutes, if you go into it and go into a sleep state and then get yourself out of it, you will feel groggy and a bit, you know, out of sync
Yep.
if you just do it once a week. If you do it every day, then not every day you will be in a sleep state, but every day it will become more natural. So when you do fall into sleep state, you get less.
Yep.
And that's the thing. And if you've got really difficult, because we have multi schedules for life, night shift workers, multi shift workers, people in all sorts of aspects where they have to sleep during phase two and phase one and phase two, not just nocturnally. So you get an opportunity to go, you can be more productive, you can get more done,
Yep.
you can have more hours in the day, you can protect yourself better in all sorts of ways because you're doing something the right way. So you don't look at it as being, so a lot of cases you would allocate a full 90 minutes
Hmm.
in that phase two period because because there's a pressure on your phase three and phase four. So I always look at either 30 minutes or 90 minutes, but don't just apply these things randomly one Saturday afternoon or Tuesday, because
It needs to be
it'll
a
really
consistent
mess
pattern.
things up.
Yep.
You have to sort of start the process, change your mindset, and overlay everything you're doing. 90 minutes would be unusual,
Hmm.
but that 20-minute, 30-minute thing is becomes almost, it becomes so natural.
Yep.
Um, but that's how we protect athletes with
Yeah, I
busy
mean,
schedules.
most athletes, professional athletes are often napping through the day. They're taking
Yep.
small, most of the ones that I've worked with, when they're training multiple times, they'll have a small 20-minute, 30-minute, whether it be a power nap or rest or jump in a sleep pod or
Yeah.
sitting in in a sauna to decompress. That recovery sort of work that they're doing. So
Absolutely.
and it seems to work for them from a performance point of view. So and I think there's plenty of evidence that that can be a useful tool for people. But our modern lives perhaps don't encourage that very well.
Well, that's the sort of, all those things you just said. I mean, you know, I've talked to, when we did a lot of work with British Cycling and Team Sky, 2018 to 2012, aggregation of marginal gains and everything else. And when you're really looking for these 1% factors, you're really looking for consistency, you're looking for sustainability.
Yep.
We touched on before about, how many injuries do you cause for yourself because of mood, motivation, decision making is all down. A late tackle, an arm in the air, things like that. How many goals don't go in? How
Yeah.
many things don't get done, but you put an excuse on it for something else? Um, and how quickly you recover from an injury, or how many times it reoccurs. So it was always looking at that whole process of what's really happening. Is it, most people think it's sort of catching up on lost sleep, like
Hmm.
going to bed early or sleeping in later. No, it isn't at all. It's like rebooting your phone up,
Yep. Yep.
so it's fully charged for the rest of the day. It's it's resetting for
So
the
it's
next
yeah.
phase, the
It
next few hours of your 24 hours. It's amazing.
Yep. So it is about allowing the system to reset, reboot, almost code itself from a computer point of view, so that it's clean, it's fresh, and the system's raring to go again.
It was even to the point, Simon, sorry to jump in. It was even to the point that, suddenly in that early part of my career, it was footballers and coaches and things like that. And then it sort of moves into cyclists, and things like the Tour de France, where, they put themselves under so much pressure, 365, in all sorts of ways. But then, I forgot to mention, I was asked to write a book, and in 2016, it became a bit of a bestseller around the world,
Okay.
18 language or whatever. And so what happened was, I was talking to surgeons, I was talking to, women in menopause, I was talking to students, I was talking to, you know, a much bigger,
Yeah.
broader sector. So you can't look at somebody and go, you know, this is how you're going to get through your 24 hours. You push it from the point of wake until there's only so many hours left, and then you go, yeah, but I work night shifts. I work multi shifts. I'm a student.
Yep. Yep.
I'm a surgeon on call for 7 days. I'm a frontline worker in the police force, and that means my pager will go off, and I don't know what I'm going to be faced with in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do I deal with that afterwards? So it's always like these little things about micro moments and CRPs, as I call them, and your 90-minute cycles, and being able to have some relationship with some pattern and rhythm really, really helps everything that we do
Yeah.
in the world that we live in.
So it's about almost allowing your system to decompress through the day for little time periods to almost set up your sleeping in the evening. So everything that you're doing during the day is almost to accommodate that sort of recovery period later in the evening. Um, Nick, I wanted to touch
Yeah.
on a couple of things. What does poor sleep do to you? What about, what is this chronic sort of poor sleep in terms of maybe injury risk or health risk? there's lots of evidence out there that actually it's extremely detrimental and almost one of the primary things that we need to do to allow our systems to recover ourselves. Um, do you have uh, any advice for people on poor sleep and yeah, how do they tackle that? Because there are lots of negative health impacts from having poor sleep.
I, I I always struggle with this one. I don't know whether I can articulate it well enough. I think there's there is always been the evidence that everything about us will deteriorate quicker um, um, if you are not dealing with this health pillar
Yep.
in a manner like you would the other health pillars, right? So if you can't expect to be physically um, flexible and strong in your 60s and 70s if you haven't looked after yourself. Same with eating, with all your organs and
Yep.
everything else, and hydrated. But in general terms, to us all, what we do is try and do our best and look after ourselves in the best way we can, so that we can live a long and healthy life, but also get everything we need to be done. When it comes to sport, it's a little bit more, or high achievers, which we all are, it's a little bit more in the now.
Hmm.
What poor sleep for us really is, you think that you are, there's certain points when you're at your best, your personal best, your
Yep.
peak, you feel good,
Yep.
you're happy, you feel good, and you're achieving and you're successful, right? But it very easily you become a shadow of that person, right? And you won't notice it specifically until it gets to a point where it's it almost has to get to a almost fatalistic point before you really take any notice, right?
Yeah.
Um, you're just your mood, your motivation, your decision making, the camouflage, the overstimulating, the don't make the gym 4 times a week, it's down to three.
Yep.
Um, everything that sort of goes on, social activity, you don't phone your friend enough, you don't take time out to see them, you don't talk enough, you don't, all that sort of stuff. It all becomes, and then suddenly it's a few more, it's not freshly cooked food every day. It's
Yep.
shifting to maybe 5 times. So what sort of happens is you think you're still doing the right things. You think you are, because you're just creating little excuses uh, for why something couldn't happen or didn't happen, and it just happens a little bit more often than it would be.
Hmm.
So I think, or sleep
It's
is
almost
not about, or I'm not.
it's almost a bit of a creeper, the poor sleep in some instances. Sometimes there can be very acute periods of
Yeah, yeah,
real poor sleep, but it's almost that, okay, that busy phase, that stress phase that just creeps up on people. And they find that rather than getting, that
yeah,
7, 8 hours, they're suddenly getting 6 and 6.5. And perhaps they're not
yeah.
sleeping, they're not exercising so well. They're not eating as well in conjunction with that, and it all sort of adds up. And as you say, it's one of those key pillars of people's ideal sort of health. So it's just essential that we try to optimize that and respect it for what it is.
Exactly. See, that's why I sort of struggle to articulate that bit. Of course, um, you know, our lives, we've got all sorts of things going on that can, not help us when we get older and everything else. But there's lots of other things out of our control. So yes, it's important. But I think, when you wake up in the morning, if you have been to sleep, whatever that sleep's been like, you just get on with your rhythms and patterns, and get your things done, and treat it to say, like, well, actually, thinking about it, I only got 3 or 4 little micro moments in yesterday
Yep.
because I was stuck inside the office and pushing it too far. I didn't get the 30 minutes in. I missed out the little session at the gym, and I actually didn't walk for 30 minutes either. So now I should try to avoid these things more often than not, because that's what happens. So what I mean is,
So they disrupt the
it's not
pattern.
about poor sleep, is you just become far more aware subconsciously
Yep.
that if this is how your day is panning out, because you can never control everything, but if this is how it's panning out and these little things are missing, then don't expect it to be like that. You can just reset tomorrow or the next day. So taking that no worries mindset out means there's no such thing as poor quality sleep.
Yeah.
There's no such sleep as that was a great night's sleep. We can experience these things, but it's the lack of awareness of why those things are happening rather than thinking, I need to up my melatonin intake, or I need to get some sleeping tablets, or I need to get this device, I need to get that, I need to get that, and I need to get that, to force myself to go into a sleep state because I'm becoming insomniacal. You're not becoming insomniacal. There's medical areas for this, but what's happening is you've just got a disturbed, out of sync rhythm to your 24 hours,
Yeah.
and it just needs resetting.
I think you know, we'll touch on this in a second with wearables, but people can become hyper anxious and hyper vigilant about their sleep and their quality. And someone wise once said to me, "Look, if you're not sleeping, you're still resting. Just so what? You're a little bit tired the next day. Nothing dramatic is going to happen. You'll still function normally." So I think taking the
Yep.
stress out of that situation can often allow people to just let go and get a little bit more rest with that, rather than being hyper focused on the actual outcome, and sort of trying to enjoy the process a little bit more. Would you agree with that?
Well, there's a couple of things there, because I think it's sort of around that sort of my R90 technique is recovery in 90-minute cycles, but it also looks at the key factors in play, which I think there are seven. One of them circadian rhythms, environment, recovery rhythm,
Yep.
chronotype, that sort of thing. So along that, any sort of coach I've ever come across is, you don't tell somebody what to do and when they're supposed to do it. You take them on a little journey and they realize they ended up there, and they look back and go, oh, look at that. Right? So you sort of, if anybody with that sort of relationship with, if we're outside, with the mountains, with the river, doing that sort of thing, camping or whatever it might be, we naturally become attuned and synced
Yes.
with those rhythms
To nature,
quite
to the
quickly.
environment. Yeah.
And generally, we both sit there, even if we're sat on a bench by the river in central London for 20 minutes. Suddenly, we sort of go, well, life's not that bad, actually, is it?
Yeah.
We sort of kind of able to put things in context. So it's kind of a lot of things to do with that. And when I got asked to coach my first extreme client, which was a single-handed round the world sailor,
Mhm.
who came to me and said, I'm going to be out there for 3 months on my own on a boat. I can't leave the deck of the boat unless these 12 things are in play. Otherwise, it's dangerous and fatal. When I go below deck, I can only be down there for 20 minutes because I have to come back up onto deck and check the circumstances.
That's an
So,
interesting
how
client to
do I
have to
do
work
that?
with. Yeah.
And you go, right, we'll just apply a multiphasic sleep approach. We'll start to train you to do that. It means you'll only look at that, and basically you can sleep anywhere, anytime, on anything,
Yep.
because that's what we naturally do as humans. So we forget about boudoirs and private sanctuaries and bedrooms and fancy mattresses and pillows and all that sort of sensory stuff. We end up getting really focused on taking the human being through a multiphasic approach where you can enter that sleep state like that quickly with some rhythm and pattern, even if you're sat in a chair, or even if you're lying on a bench, or you're on the floor, you're up the side of a mountain hanging off a piece of canopy. You know, you sort of try to get into people's minds that yes, there's a lot of things we can do
Yep.
that are available to us that will enhance our approach. But if you don't think like that in the first place, no £3,000 mattress covered in sensors doing everything like this is going to change the fact that you don't do any of this.
Yeah. So it's got to be a mindset approach, really.
Yeah.
Um, Nick, touching on wearables, we, I think sleep is getting a lot more respect now for how much value it adds to us as individuals, how it creates this, ideal healing environment. Um, Wearables are, everywhere now, and people are starting to track sleep a little bit more. Now, I think it can be incredibly useful to give some insights if you look at it in the
Yeah,
context of their entire day. But a lot of the time,
yeah,
people can get way too hypervigilant and stressed and like and I've got a Whoop. I use an Apple Watch. Oh, I'm in the red today. Oh no, it's going to be a terrible day. So you've got to
yeah.
take it perhaps with a grain of salt and just look at it in the context of
Mm.
everything. Is that your approach with them? Do you use them at all?
Absolutely. I think you sort of you encapsulated exactly what I would like to say about it. If you can't measure it in sport, you don't do it
Yep.
in the general thought process. Obviously, being able to find out key data points about your own personal health through pulse and heart rate and things like that is all really good stuff to give you an insight into how things might change. And a lot of these things are really important about things that are changing within inside yourself that could indicate other things that you need to be aware of. So it's absolutely fine.
Yep.
I think the bit the bit where sleep is sort of joined that area, it's sort of come quite quickly. So we're using the sort of technology to be able to identify what's going on, and it's
Yep.
pretty damn good,
Yep.
right? We are inputting information into these things that we input. So that's always a little bit, you have to be cautious about what you're telling it. But I think the general principle is you are not going to wake up, and like you said, it's like red flagging everywhere. You are not going to wake up in the morning and go, I am not going to work, or I'm not going to train, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to take the kids to school, right? You're not going to do that. What you do need to know that if the information, be fully aware of information that I might part and other people about all those key factors, get those things in play, and
Yep.
then you'll understand how your behavior during the day is probably creating some of that
Yep.
data. But don't, it's like a guide. I tell a lot of people, as far as sleep is concerned, map out your week. You're looking at everything, then everything, you got the actuals at the end of the week, then look at the data and
Yep.
go, right, this is what happened on Tuesday. I wasn't speaking to Simon, but then I was, and then we were supposed to do this, and then I wasn't.
So almost seeing it
Did
as
I
an
feel good about that podcast?
almost seeing it as a little experiment. Because if you have that mindset,
Yeah, and
then you're
and
just
and
watching.
also it's also we've got there's a lot more data being collected, right? The
Mhm.
more these trackers are out there, there's more data being collected, and into the emerging technologies, it creates a bigger picture about everything that we do and how we do it. However, there's still a lot of experts and key influencers in the medical world that are asking us to be very cautious about all this data that's being collected, that then how it's advising us overall, because it's collecting data of people who don't have good habits.
Yep.
I just sort of think, I exaggerate. There's a lot of people who've got good habits, but it's collecting that sort of stuff. And I think, you know, that's really where I see it. You really want to think, and the trouble is with technology, there is a there's this tracker this month, and then there's a 4.2 tracker next week, and then there's a variation of that one, and then there's another one coming out that does this, and then there's another one. Principally, what you would do is you would get a tracker and you would start tracking data. And we're talking through the seasons. We're talking when you're at work, when you're not at work, when you're on holiday, when you're not at holiday, when you've got a cold, when you've got the flu, when you've got an injury, when you've eaten too many carbs or less proteins, Christmas, January, February,
Yep.
March, April, May. You gather this data so that you can see that over the course of 365 days, with all of these variables going on, these are your key data points.
Yes.
This is how it moves and shifts,
Yep.
rather than thinking about
So you're watching
I've
trends.
got to get a good night's sleep tonight
Exactly.
because I've got to do this tomorrow, and it's too important if I don't get this. And if the tracker says this, I'm already in a negative mindset.
Yep, agreed. Touching on lifestyle, alcohol, caffeine in particular, and how these can have probably deleterious effects. You know, we live in a bit of a caffeine society, we live in an alcohol society as well. Although there's a bit more pushback with people drinking a little bit less at the moment. So, how do these impact? You know, I wear a Whoop, and I know that if I've had although I haven't drunk for a year or so, if I've had a couple of glasses of wine or a beer, that generally impacts my sleep in quite a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
As well as having too much caffeine can, mean getting to sleep is pretty tricky. So, what are your views on, okay, alcohol firstly, and then also how people can use caffeine effectively to help them?
I think I sort of, I've got, I've got sort of two sort of thoughts that I use. Um, Now, as a coach, I'm dealing with all male and female all over our planet,
Yep.
north, southern hemisphere. So you've got lots of different cultures. You've got lots of different climates. You've got different rhythms if you're dealing with people in the northern hemisphere, southern. So I think there's a sort of westernized caffeine, alcohol kind of culture.
Yep.
You certainly couldn't talk to professional cyclists without having an espresso.
Yeah.
You'd find it difficult talking to people in the Mediterranean countries, athletes there, where they wouldn't have a break between 1 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So forget that. I think I also know that for some, when you look at certain individuals, that the opportunity to have a little bit of social space is really important to
Yeah.
their overall approach.
Yep.
To have a conversation with somebody, and if a glass of wine is on the table, and that's allowing a conversation to be had, like without technology, so they can talk and they can do something, but they're just sipping it, right? And they also understand that if a second glass comes along, it's detrimental, right?
Yep.
So it's like the coffee. It's so you wander back to. I come across so many different types of diets and nutritional plans. Some that's been created I didn't even know about, whether it's fasting
Oh,
this
there's
or
lots. Yeah.
they're just endless, right? And people try to make their own up and identify with that. So within all of those sort of things, you have to sort of really find out how you're going to shift somebody's behavior and how you're going to change that overall thing. And I think it's just being mindful that, sorry for everybody listening to this, including you, Simon, but a healthy, balanced approach to this stuff in moderation, understanding it, being aware of it, it can be beneficial for a lot of people. It's not about the alcohol, it's not about the health benefits. It's just really trying to find your own little way, like taking the top off a cold beer. It can be non-alcoholic.
Yeah.
But we start with the alcoholic bottle of beer, and within 6 months, it's a non-alcoholic bottle of beer, but we've still got the
That
conversation process. I think a
exactly.
lot of people suddenly go, I'm not doing alcohol for 2 months, and off they dive into it. It's a bit like, I'm going to be vegan tomorrow.
Yep.
And then you go, what about your B12? And what about this? And what you sort of start the process. And if it really feels good, for you, and it doesn't disrupt, you know, your whole social
Yep.
activities that go on, then we can all find a way. Because,
Yep.
like you said, there's a massive increase in people who don't take alcohol, but it does change your behavior, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be mindful of what that is.
Yeah. Completely.
I know a lot of people around Bridgeford where they don't take alcohol, they don't go to the pub anymore. That's a long gone thing, but they don't socialize outside everything else. But they're doing half marathons every
Yeah. Well,
Friday night.
the gyms are the new
I can't.
are the new
I
pub
can't do
almost.
that
Or
half marathon every night because
yeah.
I'm too old and I've got a knackered ankle.
Okay. So I
Anyway, I don't know
think,
whether I answered that well enough, but
I,
I think
but I
we're
think,
shifting away from a lot of these things
yeah. So I
slowly
think,
but surely.
more
But it takes
alcohol,
time.
more
Be careful.
alcohol is going to be pretty detrimental to your sleep. It whacks
Yeah,
your sleep out. We know that.
absolutely.
Drinking caffeine too late in the day can actually, for a lot of people, actually may not bother them because they're genetically not too predisposed um, to caffeine really hitting them. But for a lot of
Absolutely.
people, it does. So I think there's no hard and fast rules. Is that what you're saying? And that we just need balance of what works for the
And what we
individual.
did with what we did, yeah, I think like you just said, is like the hard and fast rules. We're not trying to be, completely vague across the whole subject. No, 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 no. There are some specifics you need to know about. There's things you need to do, otherwise it will get quite messy,
Yep.
and you'll end up in a dark place if you're not careful. So, but what we are saying is, when you look at yourself as an individual and what you're doing, how you've been brought up, your formative growth, everything about you, right? um, is that within that there are little things that can be quite significant to how you function positively,
Yep.
and you need to be careful how you shift those things around. And things like that's where I sort of try to bring in that sort of 90-minute 16 90-minute cycles. It's sort of like, well, you know 100 milligrams of caffeine in a certain area in cycle 2 or cycle 1 or cycle 3. Uh, I always think about more of a nice balanced, gradual approach to the 24 hours rather than I take on 3,000 milligrams of caffeine to get me going, stop at lunchtime because it'll affect my sleep later. Well, if you go through these highs and lows, your brain's going to hate this.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you do one one glass of wine every day at a certain time in a balanced way with everything else, the alcohol impact is going to be very minimal. What about your light exposure?
Yep.
You're
Yep.
absolutely so overexposed with blue light, or so underexposed with blue light, or so overexposed with diminished lights
Yep.
and
Yep.
amylite and melatonin. So those sort of things are out of whack. And I think when you get that sort of, the more you get that little relationship in every little cycle, 24 hours, it's not Monday to Sunday, it's a rolling 24 hours, and how you get that relationship and the little things that you do, you really start to feel how things can you can feel the impact of these things in
Yep.
a far more subtle and pleasurable way rather than exaggerated. And I think that's where most people sit, where they go, I don't take caffeine after lunch, because they're exaggerating the process rather than, you know, if I get 30 minutes in walking every day, I'm doing okay.
Yep. Yeah. So it is that, it's like, we need all those pillars of our lifestyle, those 6 pillars of lifestyle that we talk about in lifestyle medicine anyway. And,
Yeah.
exercise, stress, sleep, nutrition, social, um,
Yeah.
and sort of relationships. And if we have balance across all of those, then we should be bringing something to the table to allow us to sleep well. So it's just making sure that we have the right rhythms across the whole day, I think is what you're saying. Um,
I think so, Simon. It certainly worked. You know, there's a lot more people in the field these days, and there's a lot more books written, podcasts, and everything else where you want to go. But I still get asked, even when people, dive into these areas and they get all the trackers in, they get all this done, they try to develop it themselves as a group or organization, but they always wander back to sort of how do we kind of apply this and
yeah, yeah,
do exactly what it sounds so simple
yeah.
to sort of create that rhythm, but that's really where our success lies,
Yep.
particularly with the way the world is coming at us now,
So, Nick,
is that rhythm of being able to think.
we've sort of run over time, and I've got another 20 odd questions I could have dived into.
Because I talk too much,
But
and
but but
you
you
put
love to
this podcast
chat,
at 4:30,
and it's
right?
been utterly fascinating. So maybe we'll have to chat again. But I just want to if you had to give people one or two little tips to try to optimize their sleep, what would it be? Is it just about taking the pressure out of it? Is it getting the right room temperature? Is it getting us, getting sunlight in the morning, or is it your view is, okay, pretty regular wake time is the idea, and split your days up into those 90-minute. What's a couple of little things that people can almost immediately do to help to improve their sleep?
You just did it. Congratulations.
Okay,
It is.
perfect.
I mean, a lot of times it's like, oh, so if I listen to these sort of sounds or binaural beats, that'll do it. If I put these eye masks on, I take that supplement, or I take those, whatever. Um, I just want to find something that will sort it,
Yep,
so I
yep,
feel in control.
yep,
It is just lovely, is right. For me, put an ing on it. Sleep is passive. It's something that gets fitted in at the end of your everything else you want to do. So shift it and put an ing on it and make it sleeping.
yep,
So I'm sleeping, I'm hydrating, I'm exercising, and I'm eating, right? So it becomes part of your health pillars. So you want to start thinking you are doing something about sleeping in every cycle of your day.
yep.
Your ARP, your sunrise, give your brain that first opportunity
Hmm.
to at least start your day. So
Hard in the
pick a
UK at
nice time.
times, but yes.
You can just pick a time. Um, Mine's 6:30. I like it on the hour or half an hour because I don't have to think about it. 6:30 or 6 o'clock. So 6:30 is into 8, 8's into 9:30. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to have something going off on my wrist or in my notepad.
And so
I
you
just
prefer
get
to
these
wake up
nice five and
naturally. Yep,
yeah, and so my wake cycle 16 is between 5 and 6:30. So if I wake naturally between 5 and 6:30, I'm absolutely fine because I can start my day
yep,
around the 6:30 space. I'd like to be waking up closer to 6 rather than closer to 5 because if it's closer to 5 then I'll just reset.
yep,
But but as long as I'm closer to 6 and I always switch the alarm off and then the first thing I do is exposure to light, daylight, blue light, whether it's a device or whether it's something. So anybody who's got blackout blinds and curtains, it's okay to try and stimulate going to sleep, but it's difficult to wake in dark. If you're
yep,
outside, the sun will wake you up, right? Even with your eyes shut.
yep.
So it's kind of daylight. You get that and you will feel hungry. You will bowel and bladder. You will feel motivated to do a little challenge. You'll feel like creating that space is really important because it almost feels like you've created another 90 minutes in your day
Hmm.
because you've taken the pressure off the start of it. So 6:30, I don't do anything until 8 o'clock. Right? I will do things positively, like go for a walk. I might go for a swim. I get loads of light. I might take the dog for a walk. I hydrate, have breakfast, bowel and bladder, da da da. But I avoid becoming a sleep coach before 8 because I know I'm not ready.
Okay, so
So that's the one.
mentally, you don't start work per se, is in mental tasks till 8 o'clock.
And as a chronotype, I'm a morning chronotype, right? I love the mornings,
So
right?
so
Give me
there's
all the challenges you want,
there's
right?
there's
What I don't want to be doing is feeling really tired and wanting to go to bed at 9:30 at night. I don't live in this world like that, right?
yep,
So I've got a morning chronotype, and the start to my day is critical to how it all pans out. That little 30-minute CRP late in the afternoon, which I should be doing now or just before I came on to you, because
sorry,
now I'm
I've
waffling too much.
I've I've
You've messed
I've
it up,
messed
but
up
that's
your
it.
routine.
Right? But it means, I can still go to the gym at 9 o'clock tonight. I could still have a nice meal at 9 o'clock at night because I've already targeted 12:30 and 4 cycles in 6 hours. So I'm taking the pressure off my chronotype, but
Yep,
using it to my advantage. And that's the key. An ARP,
and ARP,
just think the most consistent wait time in your week. Don't try and overthink
ARP.
it.
What do you mean by ARP?
Anchor reset point.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect.
All right.
Okay,
So don't think it's got to be on 6:30. What you're doing is you're in that space of the end of cycle 16. That's where
yep,
6:30 starts, right? And your first cycle 6:30 into 8 is your first cycle of the day, right?
yep,
So if you have to, so you can see how it, that's it in daylight, and put an ing on it.
okay,
Just think
Put an
Yeah.
ing on it. Well,
Cycle 3, look out the window, stare at the trees, give your mind an opportunity to reset, think about different things, create different emotions. That's a little micro moment. That adds up to your overall sleep, and that will protect you from anything that's coming along. And just get one of those in tomorrow and start to think. And by the end of the week, you'll probably be waking up and switching the alarm off and getting set. But again, any little top tips you give to people, if you start with an ARP, chop your day up into 16, 90-minute cycles, think about those little things. But there's a lot of people might be listening to this who might be night shift workers,
yep,
multi-shift
yep.
workers,
And that varies and that changes
and
it
they go,
all.
well, I can't do that. And so, well, you can, but you just turn everything
Yep,
round that dial.
yep.
That's all that happens.
Nick, you could definitely chat for a lot longer. I'd love to chat, but I'm mindful that we've got to wrap up. So thank you so much for your time. Utterly fascinating. I mean, there's so many more things we could dive into, but hopefully that's
Absolutely.
been super, super insightful for people. And, maybe we'll have to get you back on.